All right, we made it. All right, guys. So today's gonna be a little different format for the podcast. I brought in Gabby to talk about kind of the dark happenings of Twitch and some of the things that we've seen kind of in the last week happening on Twitter and kind of unfolding in people's streams. And I thought it would be good to have her come in and kind of give like more of an industry like insider perspective, someone that's worked in the industry for a long time, kind of understands like the workings of organizations and how streamers make a living. So I thought it would be a really good perspective because me as an outsider, I don't really have a great understanding of the inner workings of Twitch. I mean, I'm someone that's on Twitch all the time, but I've never been to any industry events. I've never had a partnership deal. I've never had any of those conversations. So let me just bring her in really quick here, and I'm gonna unmute her, and you guys can say hi. But let's do it. All right.
Hi, Chad. How you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. So obviously a lot of people in chat I think know you already, but how long have you been streaming for? Just to give a little bit of background. Like how long have you been in the
um,
industry?
I've streamed for 5.5 years, but I've been full-time streaming for, is it 3 years now? Yeah, 3 years.
Okay. Okay. And
So,
then I guess in your background, you're not a professional gamer, right? So there's kind of like the two different like avenues for this, right? Like sort of
yeah,
streamer, content creator, and then more of like the
exactly.
pros, that kind of thing.
I think I've had my moments where I tried to pursue the competitive part, just because I felt like, I don't know, I had some good performance competitively. And as I had that, I kind of wanted to explore it just to know where I'd be. But then I realized that I didn't find much joy in it. It was a lot of grinding and the type of grinding that I didn't enjoy. So I felt like I couldn't pursue the stream and competitive. I had to choose, sort of.
Okay. So sort
Because
of
I
like
think
yeah.
yeah, for me, the stream is, I mean, if you're gonna go for a competitive stream, you have a completely different setting in the stream. Usually, like, just you doing your thing, you're really good at the game. Everyone else is just there to watch you and learn and, I don't know, enjoy the gameplay. Whereas if you focus more on the entertainment side, your main goal is never gonna be to be the best in the game, because it always
Hmm.
comes at the cost of something else, usually entertainment or chat or whatever.
So
So,
so
yeah.
with the stuff that's been going on, kind of this week, I mean, from what I've kind of read and seen on on Twitter, it seems like a lot of it has to do with organizations. Some of it has to do with Twitch directly. So I think it seemed like, in your experience, I mean, are orgs more for more for professionals, or does it not really matter? Is it kind of like is it a useful thing for both types of streamers, or like what do you see there? Like how
Do you
does
mean having an org as
yeah,
a
so
streamer,
yeah, and
or
exactly like how does that sort of set up, I guess? Like, at what point do you get does that become part of the
hmm
conversation,
hmm
in your career, that kind of thing?
I think it's important. Here's the thing: like, organizations, what they offer is basically potentially money, like a salary, but it also potentially offers you exposure. And essentially, as a streamer, since everything you do is for exposure, you have to really keep it in mind of is this valuable for you? Because what you get or what you give in return for the exposure or money is basically your freedom. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to keep that in mind, because it always comes at a cost for something. Whether it's, it can be freedom in terms of sponsors. They might have this deal. I know, for instance, I've been in talks with orgs before, and there's been deals where if I jump on board, I have to take on their sponsors, period. And one of their sponsors collided with one of my sponsors.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait, I'm not gonna drop my one of my absolutely most important sponsors, because, like, just to jump on board. And if it's then not, um if the pay doesn't really weigh up to it, then it's
Yeah.
definitely not worth.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things you got to keep in mind. And then you have the exposure. I think there's very few teams that actually give you exposure. If it's a smaller team, you're the one giving them exposure, so in other words, they have to pay you.
Hmm. So they're trying to
But
sign you up to basically like build their own brand and their own like yeah.
exactly.
That makes sense.
And
So
essentially, in order for it to be a mutual beneficial agreement, you would have to go to a big organization like 100 Thieves, Liquid, these kind of organizations. And what they do is, of course, they pay you because you stream under their banner. Usually, you also get their sponsors and everything. They send you to events, all that, cover your costs to events. But then you usually have to fulfill a like set amount of um like what do you call them, I can't find the English word, but basically things that you have to do in order to
yeah,
fulfill the agreement.
yeah,
Whether it's, I don't know, some teams, I think that Method, for instance, they used to have this thing where they have to stream on the Method account like once a month, or yeah, deliverables, thank you, that was the word that I was looking for. um so you will have these deliverables that the team expects you to do, and that's going to take some time from you, whether it's like social media posts or doing certain events for the team or whatnot. But basically, it's not just super easy, get their exposure, get their money. It's not like that. I think a lot of people see it like that,
hmm
but you usually sign away a lot of freedom when you do it.
yeah. And don't you generally give up a percentage too of like? I mean, a lot of those agreements aren't you giving up a percentage of your future earnings, that kind of thing as well, like
I think
something like
some of
that?
them do, but definitely not all.
Okay, so it kind
I
of
think
depends.
it's mainly, yeah, I think it's mainly the competitive ones. It's common to have like in competitive scene, it's common to have so of your winnings in a tournament, then we take X amount of money and you get a salary in return, pretty much.
Okay,
So it's kind of, they still have an incentive to win tournaments and stuff, but they also have the security of the team, sort of.
okay. So that way, so like, as a professional streamer, it's like if you don't have that kind of backing, or you don't have your sponsors, you don't have this, don't have an org, you don't have all of these things, you're like, I guess the stability of your job, or the stability of your career is kind of like up and down, and it's more based on how your stream's performing, like month to month or week to week, that sort of thing, right? So it seems like it's
Absolutely.
really important at some point to either get attached to an org or get attached to certain brands and have
Yeah.
have sponsors, that sort of thing, to make it more of a viable career, and to give
Yeah.
yourself stability, right?
Absolutely, I think so. I think it's either way, it's good to have some sort of like uh, stable monthly income, because otherwise, like subs and all that, they can be really, really fluctuant, especially when there's something like Corona happening. That can be really, really devastating for some streamers. Or, for instance, in Mixer's case, where they just cancel the entire platform without even saying anything.
Yeah,
I mean, that's completely devastating. And of course, sponsors are not going to do anything towards that either, because you can't provide exposure anymore. So you can't fulfill your end of the bargain. But I mean, there's a lot of situations that the more stable income you have, the more risk you eliminate, because essentially this is a very risky business. And I think the more you can eliminate that risk, the better. And that's also one of the reasons it's really important to be on other social media platforms
hmm
like YouTube, Instagram, etc. Honestly, some of my sponsors, they pay me mainly for my Instagram content, like my Instagram followers, for instance.
yeah,
They pay more for that than they do for my Twitch, even though my Twitch essentially is my main thing.
mm.
But yeah,
Yeah, because you have a
it's
little bit more
it's
like directed reach, and you're reaching more people with every post, and it's a little more
yeah,
powerful, like if yeah, that makes sense.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Making dead, sorry,
All right.
making dedicated posts are definitely very powerful. And I think that's important as well, to not give away for free. Some people tend to like offer these or take deals with sponsors where they're supposed to do, I don't know, a post on Instagram, maybe a stream or something, but they don't really get anything in return. And in my opinion, that's a really, really bad idea, because what you're doing is basically um, giving away your value for free. And what you do then is, in the long run, you're going to undervalue yourself. And even though you might not be super big, it's better just to not take those deals, in my opinion, unless they really give you something concrete in return. Because eventually, if what you're doing is just watering out the entire market, so people are, or brands are just going to pay less and less for deals, because they know that there are streamers who take really shitty deals because
Yeah.
they just want anything. They might even think it's cool to put a brand on their stream,
hmm
even
Well,
though there's absolutely no point.
Well, yeah, and I know that. I mean, this is a little bit getting a little bit off the off the main topic, but I know that as small as a smaller streamer, you see a lot of the things that you'll get approached with, or that people maybe just ahead of like where I'm at, for instance, will get approached with. It's something where you're advertising a product and they're just giving you like a discount on like you know what I mean, like on their
Yep.
website or something like that, or it's like we'll give you a
Yep.
small commission if someone uses the link, but at the end of the day, it's like it's really not a very like good deal for you. It's pretty much you have all of the risk and you kind
Exactly.
of like bring it all on yourself. You get very little
Yep.
in return. So it really it
Especially
yeah,
like affiliate deals. Like,
yeah.
okay, if people buy these products, you get like 5% of the earnings. Like, ugh, that's so bullshit.
Yeah. So it really
I don't
makes
know.
more
Giving
sense to sort of hold out and just wait until you get to the point where you're really trying to get to, and then start to make those deals. And I feel like the less you
exactly.
take on early, probably the more leverage you're going to have later, because you don't already have all this sort of like you haven't like sold out at any point. So it's kind of like you've got a little bit more bargaining power,
Yeah.
I feel like, when you get to that point. But really the reason I wanted to kind of go down that road was just to set up, I think, a little bit of the landscape of kind of like what's been going on with there's been a lot of streamers coming out this week with accounts of a kind of abuse of power, manipulation, all kinds of things that are just really just dirty things that are kind of happened, that have happened, and probably are continuing to happen, but they're just things are becoming more aware of them now.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding the situations that people were finding themselves in because of who was holding all the cards, and why they kind of needed these relationships to basically continue doing the career that they were doing, and trying to move forward. So I think
Yeah,
that's why I
I
kind
think
of
you're
wanted to.
completely right because it's important to lay the foundation of how you actually provide yourself or for yourself as a streamer. Because if you don't understand that part, then I guess it's not really easy to follow what's going on in the industry. Because essentially, I think it looks very different behind closed doors than what people think it is. And I guess that's the whole main situation. And I see a lot on Twitter where people are commenting on these posts and stuff, and they have a completely different angle than what the streamers are having. I guess they just don't really understand the actual dilemma.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's like the business end of it, that I think a lot of like just like lay people like myself, like someone that's a little bit on the outside looking in on this. It's like you sort of romanticize streaming, and you sort of think it's like, no, you just like get on your stream and you do your thing every week, and like that's all there is to it. And there's no
Yeah.
there's no business meetings, there's no like there's no business of it, right? It's just sort of like, no,
Yep.
you're just like hanging out at your house playing video games for 6 or 8
Yeah.
hours or 10 hours or
And
whatever it
we
is. And
actually do something businessy. It's at an event where you're like, I don't know, partying and meeting fun folks and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, but
I
I
think
think
I think
that's
it's a
yeah.
very glorified side of it, or
Hmm.
at least, I mean, essentially that's also what streamers like to um build, like a facade of
Yeah.
I guess this glorified job. And I think that if you don't actually look beyond that, you're not going to see the rough parts of it,
Hmm.
or the struggles and potential issues that can arise. So I think that what the image that people see is of both us and like, I don't know, all types of influencers, whether it's YouTube or whatever. There's a lot more to it that you don't really see.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that that's what's sort of tricky, I think, with like a lot of the women that have kind of come forward this week. I think that the reason that I see, anyways, this is how I'm seeing it from the out, kind of the outside, is that the reason it's taken so long to feel comfortable doing that is that these people that they had these situations with were they're people that basically controlled like their financial sort of destiny. It's like it's kind of like
Yep.
whether their their career was going to keep progressing, whether they were going to maintain certain relationships, or at least they felt that way, right? They felt like
Yep.
if they come out and explain or accuse or whatever on this person, that this could cost me this or this going forward. And I think that's what's kind of, I think, like the dark side of kind of the industry, and like the dark side of what's been
Yep.
happening. And I think why it's important to sort of explain that to people, like kind of what is
Yep.
going on, and why
I
why
think
is
it's
the system the
important
way it is.
to keep in mind the fact that everyone starts out being no one. online.
Hmm.
And once you are no one, you don't really know how to get further and how to actually get out of that little bubble. And usually it involves being discovered by someone or doing something that, makes you grow or whatnot. But essentially, you're going to need help from other people to grow. This is a very, very networking based job, and it requires you to network a lot to get yourself out there. And some people, I guess, have it easier and other people have it harder. And essentially, everyone's just striving to sort of get themselves out there, their brand and everything. And as they do that, they encounter a lot of people. And the problem in this whole situation that's been going on Twitter is that the people that they've been reaching out to have had very much power in the industry in some way, whether it's they're at a brand that can offer sponsorship, or if they work at Twitch and they can provide partnership on Twitch, or if it's I don't know, you're going to an event and you want to be part of an organization or something. Either way, it's just people that have a lot of influence and that could potentially mean everything for your career. You have no idea because I mean, you don't know what the future holds. So essentially, these people with a lot of power, a lot of influence that could help you out and do everything for you. And that is basically why the problem with all this manipulation and sexual assault is a huge problem, because especially so many girls are, I guess, a bit more vulnerable in the sense that I don't know, there's a lot of guys that try to take advantage of girls. There's of course the other way around as well, but I would definitely say it's more common in women.
Well, and it's
And
go ahead.
yeah,
I was just gonna say it's a very male dominated industry, right? So it's like
absolutely.
especially in like the positions of power in these organizations and of Twitch, and I think that also is kind of a big a big issue. And when I was kind of thinking about this, over the last couple of days, when we've kind of been talking about doing this and having this conversation, one of the things I
Yep.
was thinking about was just how much how much of a boys club it is, but then also like how much like money and like influence these people have in these big seats that don't want to give it up. And it's kind of that's the I think the biggest thing is it's like it's very it's great to want change, but at the same time when there's that much money and like power and sort of things like connected to these positions, it's very difficult to sort of move these people out of these positions and kind of like really cause change quickly, because it's so much money. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
so
It's a lot
that's
of money, and I think a lot of these people also, I mean, they themselves strive to accomplish more, and they do that by knowing the best, maybe even finding the best before they explode on Twitch or whatnot.
hmm
So they have an agenda as well.
hmm
And if you combine that, and usually these people that do manipulate and all that, they have some, psychological issues where they might be hungry for power, whether it's power towards abusing someone or like pushing them down, or it's just power in terms of manipulating and controlling other people or whatnot. But essentially, those people are usually the ones that tend to end up on top because, well, they're willing to fight for their thing, and they usually somehow get their way, whether it's in a good or bad way.
yeah, yeah, and usually it's not, yeah,
Yeah.
not in the positive side of things. So
Exactly. So
yeah,
I
for
guess we
sure.
can go into a bit on what's happened on Twitter for those of
hmm
you who have missed it. I don't know if there's anyone in chat who hasn't been up to speed of this, but essentially it started like maybe a week ago. It hasn't been going on for that long, but it feels like forever now because it's been so much and it's been getting worse and worse every single day. Essentially, it started with I don't know, one or two women coming out with their story about they were streamers and how they have been sexually assaulted, manipulated. I don't, at this point, I don't even remember what story came first because there are so many stories. But essentially, there were these horrible stories about women in the industry that were being abused in some way by men in the industry with a lot of power. And essentially it boiled down to the fact that they could use their power and their position to sort of get what they want from these women, whether it was rape um or just manipulation, and I don't know, some things were more like nudes, sexting, making them do things, and there's a lot of different variations of this. Essentially, it's just really really bad things that these girls thought they had to do because these guys were in a position to essentially end their careers or deny them the future that they wanted, and a lot of these girls thought that this is the only way forward, which is really sad. um and it's only now coming. I think that everyone has sort of known about this behind closed doors. With everyone I mean like streamers and I don't know, people working in the industry. Um, we've probably known about these things. We just haven't known the extent of it. And now that things have come to light, it's so much bigger and so much worse than anyone could ever have thought.
It's
And it's
interesting.
really
Yeah.
disturbing.
And it's interesting, well, not interesting, but it's like the other thing too is that there's most of these conversations happened like through text message and through
Yeah,
DMs, and so it's not like it's just hearsay or someone's account. It's like you literally
yeah,
have a record of a lot of
yep,
these things, so it's like there's no there's no like denial or anything. It's like
exactly.
it's very very public, and
Yep,
it's very clear, what
yeah.
happened. I mean, it's I
And
think
the
that's
crazy
yeah.
part is that in some of these cases, the men that are being singled out have been getting stories from like 3 4 5 even 10 girls with different stories around the same guy,
Mhm.
which when you get to that point it's like, okay, I mean, one story you might be able to dismiss, two, three, four story, like when everyone has their own story and they all sort of add up and they make sense, and time wise it all fits.
Mhm.
You kind of realize that you can't, and then you have the evidence, you have in some cases these guys even confess, and when they have been confessing, Twitch have actually been permabanning them. So all the guys that did confess, they've been permabanned on Twitch. Some of them have even officially went out and said that they are leaving the entire space. They are quitting streaming, YouTube, everything, and just leaving. um so that's the good part, that we're actually seeing some change, which is probably the first time I see an event like this lead to some change. And I really hope that this is going to be permanent change,
Mhm.
but I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think that's I think the good of it is that it is happening very quickly because, like you said, there's such a record, and there's such patterns with these people that there's really like no they have nowhere they have no ground to stand on, right? These guys that
Yeah.
like this that are getting accused of these things. It's like it's very clear what they did, and it's very it's very public, right? And all the
Yeah.
everyone's sort of such a public figure in this space, at different levels, that you can't, I mean, you can't hide from it, you can't deny it, you can't, I mean, there's really nothing you can do, and you really can't yeah, you can't recover from it either. So it's like
Yeah.
it's great
Yeah,
because
it's
you're yeah
devastating. I mean,
yeah
some of these girls are like completely broken. And I mean, there's like one instance, I'm not going to name any names because we don't know what's true and what's not. But essentially, there's this story about a girl, a Twitch partner, who essentially got used, according to her story, she got used by a um, partner manager in on Twitch. So basically, he works for Twitch, and he ensures that people get partnership. That he helps them out if they have any issues, any concerns. They usually help out at TwitchCon and stuff like that. Yeah, allegedly. So we don't know if this is true or whatnot. But anyway, so according to her, he sort of abused his power and uh, demanded from her that she would send nudes, etc., in exchange for partnership. And I don't know all the details of what she said, but essentially it led to the fact that she became very uncomfortable. At some point, I think there were nudes exchanged and even leaked further on. And I don't know, it was really, really devastating for her, both for her character personally, but also for her as a brand. So I mean, that's not the type of abuse that should be possible on the
hmm
platform if that happened. And I guess that's what basically people want to see some change around the
So
fact that this should not be the standard in the industry.
So was that the main the main story that was kind of pointing the finger directly at Twitch and not at like a brand or an org or something along those lines? Because that I think that's
As
been
far
the
as I've seen, yeah.
okay. So that's been the other difficult thing I think for a lot of us. Like it's difficult to sort of like you said, sort of unravel things and try to figure out like where things started and like what you read like the reactions to to tweets or to things, but you're not. It's very difficult sometimes to find like a source, like where like what actually like caused this
Yeah.
outrage, like what caused everyone to get to kind of get
Yeah,
upset, that
yeah.
kind of thing.
Also, like chat is saying right now that on top of this, there's been like incidents at, for instance, TwitchCon and stuff, and these things have been reported, like for instance rapes and etc., and they have been reported to Twitch, and these people have also been continuously like these people that are allegedly the abusers in these cases have been continued to be invited to these events and also been offered like interview positions in big events and stuff like that. So essentially, the other part of it is well, a is the abuse of what we were just talking about, abuse of power, but the second one is also hiding and covering up and not really doing anything about these issues. And Soter just linked a tweet as well, which is a guy who was working as a VP at Twitch, who did report some sexual harassment complaint or like filings or whatever you call it, and they said it would be handled, and then later on it was just shrugged off, and he was told that nah, we're not going to do anything about it because it's an important person, like it's someone's uncle or something. So essentially the problem is that you have people's backs. It doesn't matter what they do or how they behave, because um you have the other people, um you have their backs. It's this bro culture or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, where we're gonna look the other way. We're just bros, as long as you don't do anything to me, we're good. And there's a lot of that going on, sadly. And a lot of men are also coming out now explaining that they're really sorry for ever being part of that and doing those kind of things.
Yeah, because it seems
So
like
that's
it's for such a big company, or what you think of as a big company. It seems like it's actually this very like
yeah,
small like group of people that are, like you said, kind of like watching each other, like covering for each
yeah,
other, sweeping things under the rug. Like you wouldn't think of it that in that way. I think it's kind of like, I would think of it as being this more like, public company of a lot of transparency, like, these things, like you would think that these things wouldn't be possible. And I
yeah,
think that's what's sort of interesting, is to see that they are, and then I think that's the most alarming bit of it, is it's like, it's this company that's owned, this big company that's owned by Amazon, who's like this giant company you would think would have, a sort of, culture and things like that sort of put into place that would sort of help protect their employees and that kind of
yeah,
thing from these sorts of things. And the fact
yeah.
that they
And I
don't
think
is like,
it's
it's alarming.
a very good example of this is another one, which regards Method. I think most of you have probably heard about Method by now, but this is also another instance. There was a member of Method, Josh, that I don't know what's confirmed or what's not, because there's been a police report. I don't know if there's a conviction. I don't think there was, because there was no evidence. And essentially, all of these issues, they cannot be confirmed with police investigations, because when it comes to rape and all these things, it's nearly impossible to prove that someone raped someone, except for hearsay, which isn't enough to prove something. You would pretty much have to catch them in the act, have witnesses, or catch it right after it happens, and be able to collect samples and stuff like that. So it's nearly impossible to actually prove that this happened, and that is probably the biggest issue if you keep referring to the fact that you need um police investigations or even a conviction to back up a decision like that. And in Method's instance, it was about this guy then, Josh, who for years have reportedly been abusing women, raping women, saying these really horrible things that are very not TOS friendly. And essentially, it's been sort of shown by email conversation from a lot of different angles and stuff that the Method organization was aware of this. They were even aware of a police investigation. But this Josh guy was so good at like talking himself out of it. So and he was also very charming and those kind of things. So his friends were like, all right, sure, we we believe you, it's fine, we're bros, we've been playing together for years, and we believe you. And that's probably the problem. Just because you play with someone on a regular basis does not mean that you actually know them in person. And that's also a very, very like dangerous misconception, I guess, because we think that we know people online, but you actually have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. And sadly, that's what these girls have been experiencing. Um, Maybe even when they're in bad mood, or they might be high, they might be drunk, they might be, I don't know, on some sort of rage. Normally, they wouldn't stream that, they wouldn't show that to the world, but
And
when you get
who?
that kind
So
of
so this person was like a host, or was like what kind of position were they within?
Josh was he was part of the raid team in World of Warcraft, so the method team. He was playing for the team in WoW. He also did a lot of streaming and stuff. After the investigation, I think a year ago, he was banned on Twitch. So Twitch went ahead and permabanned him a long time. Later on, I don't know if it was a year ago or 2 years ago or something, but a while later, Method even tried to reinstate him on Twitch, knowing what they knew.
Wow.
And I've also seen images of PMs where people have, like, after this point, reported new things that he had done. So yeah, okay, he was banned exactly 1 year ago. So he had continued with this behavior and stuff, and they tried to get his channel back while also knowing about this. Essentially, where it ended up is that someone posted their story about Josh on Twitter. The story came out, and I think more people started joining up and like explaining their story. And essentially, everyone realized what was going on, and Method couldn't really cover it up anymore. And so, essentially, within 24 hours, or like at least 1.5 day, pretty much every streamer, which is probably like 50 streamers or something, and pretty much everyone in the raid team had left Method, the organization.
Mhm.
Method didn't even have time to put up a statement in that duration, and basically all the sponsors left, everyone left. So there's nothing left of the organization. And eventually, after everyone had left, one of the owners came out and said, like, yeah, we're sorry, we failed you, and it's yeah, I should have done better, I should have known better.
Yeah, it's
This
crazy
kind of
that they
story.
would. I don't know. I feel like to put that much stock into one person, especially someone that's been accused of that, those types of things like that. It just doesn't. It's really surprising that someone wouldn't just cut tie. You know what I mean? Like that's like this
Yeah,
person must have just been very either very influential or just a very good communicator
exactly.
to be able to to not only to manipulate the people above them as well. That's kind of
Yeah,
it's kind of
it's insane.
it's
And I think
yeah.
that's the problem, that these people that do these kind of things, they're usually like, they usually get away with it. Even the women themselves that have been abused, they don't realize it until like way later, because they don't really understand that what is being done to them is wrong, and that they are doing it against their will. It's just that they're being persuaded to do it
Hmm.
in a very manipulative way. So yeah, exactly, like Soto was saying in chat, he was a very good communicator, well spoken, and also very smart, I would say. I think that he knew exactly what he was doing.
Hmm.
um so very exactly typical abuser behavior. So it's usually a person that you would never expect. Very manipulative. Gets everyone to like you, and you will always be able to get away with it as long as, well, something like this doesn't happen, and it's like multiple victims, multiple different angles. At some point it might get too much and things get out, and then it will be hard to do anything about it. And I guess he is his like, after the statement went out, his Discord was removed, I think his Twitter was removed. Pretty much he just vanished, pretty much. So that also goes to show that, I mean, it's probably, most of it's probably true, even though there's no evidence. There's some guys that have had this happen to, that are defending themselves, and I have no idea what to believe. In some cases, it feels like it's like a jealous ex that is trying to ruin their, you know, their ex's career or whatnot. And in some cases, it just feels like both people are pretty, you know, pretty caught up in this whole mess. And, it's difficult to know, but I think it's
Mhm.
important to still listen to all the stories of the women because, yes, there are false accusations, but there are so much more often real
Yeah.
stories that uh, they don't actually dare sharing because it's usually very shameful. I mean, there's a reason why you call it the walk of shame
I think
because
that
it's
I think
it's
setting up
shameful for
the
the woman, not for the man, essentially. Because
for sure. But I think setting up the like right now the way that the culture is set up, especially with like the examples that we've been talking about where, people have come forward and they basically had their, had it kind of thrown in their face a bit and had people tell them that this kind of show them that the behavior is not that the behavior is okay by like you said reinstating people, sort of like banning them temporarily and not making it a long-term thing, so that way you kind of you don't the culture around coming forward and saying what happened wasn't really there. So it's like yeah, I see what I guess that's kind of I think
yeah, yeah,
the main point of
absolutely.
it is setting up a culture where it is okay to come forward and then make those determinations of, like you said, because that's where it gets tricky, right? Is that everyone's so public and things can get out of hand very quickly just with, like you said, if it's an angry person or whatever an accusation, it's like you need to have a culture where it's okay to come forward, but also a culture where it doesn't at the same time it doesn't like encourage people to falsely come forward, so it's like there's got to
Yep,
be sort of this, it's got to be the right. They just have to have the right
exactly.
systems in place so that that people that have had things happen to them can come forward. There's consequences for the things that these people are doing, but at the same time, you just yeah, it has to be done. I think I don't know. It's a little different because everyone's so
Yeah,
public, and it's
definitely.
it's
I think
very
it's
yeah
also good to look at what Hannah wrote in chat. The fact that as a woman, when it comes to rape and such, sexual abuse, the law is not on your side. So I think it's really good to see that the industry doesn't care that the law is not on their side because they are going to do the right thing anyway. And that's really, really impressive, I would say.
mhm,
The fact that people are leaving organizations, sponsors are leaving teams, and people are actually saying, no, this is not okay. We're going to do something about this. And that is the cool part. That we're actually seeing some change. And I hope that this is for the long run and that these people don't, disappear for a year and then resurface in a new organization under a new name or whatnot.
yeah.
Um, I really hope that this will be some long term change, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, no, I think that's really really powerful. Oh, I had yeah, I was gonna share something. So I'm trying to think
Okay,
of
yeah.
how to do this. So I think it was about a year ago. I got called. So I have to kind of be very vague about this because it's like I got called in for jury duty, and the
Oh,
case
yeah.
that I was a part of had to do with this topic. So I'm just gonna be very general with this. But what it came down to in when we came down to whether we were going to convict the person or not, it was again it was very much on topic. What it came down to was whether we so there was no evidence other than the person's account, right? So it was this person's word versus the other person's word. The person didn't have to say anything because in America it's you're innocent until you're proven otherwise.
Yeah.
So what it came down to was not that whether we believed, well, it was whether we believed the person, the person that was accusing someone of this thing. It was whether or not we thought that that person had anything to gain by coming forward and doing that, and that was
Oh,
basically
okay.
what it came down to. So and I think that's so the way that it sort of affected how I look at the legal
Yeah.
side of it now, because I've kind of had this instance. And um it's I think in a lot of cases, in more of like in more of a private setting, that is I think that's much easier to sort of make that determination, whether someone has anything to gain or not. When it's in more of a business setting like this, it's tricky, I think. And I think that is a major issue, because it's like you said, if there's no evidence, there's nothing.
Yep.
then what do you do? And
And
I
like you
think that's,
say,
yeah.
if the goal that's probably the problem with all these people like falsely accusing that they might themselves be a bit manipulative and have a lot of anger issues and they want to take out their rage by destroying someone else's career.
Hmm.
Um, it might not necessarily be about gaining fame themselves, but ruining someone else's career, and that's very, very dangerous. I guess I would say most of these instances where the girls come out with the stories, um, it's usually the other way around. These girls have been holding it in
Yeah.
because they they know that if they come out with it, no one would believe them. I mean, it's either themselves who are pretty unknown or this huge streamer that is really likable and really appreciated by everyone. So it's really cool to see that. I guess in that sense you could call it the weaker party is being heard.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and I love the way that it's happening too, where people feel comfortable enough to write detailed accounts of their experience and making them public, because I know it really puts people in a very uncomfortable position. It puts them, they're putting themselves out there. They're being very vulnerable in a very public way, and
Yeah.
that's why I kind of reached out to you in the first place, was I was reading a lot of these accounts on Twitter, and it really is, it's very it's very moving. It's very hard not to, like, just completely dive, like, just get sucked into it, and really,
Yeah.
feel for these people that have gone through these things and kind of understand, like, this stuff is happening. And I was just amazed at how many there were, but just how I don't know, like, how exposed people were allowing themselves to be,
Yeah.
and letting people
And it's
into
really
their,
cool that
you know.
it's sort of strengthened numbers. Like one person did it first, and then, another one would like, okay, if you did it, I'll do it too.
Hmm.
And, all of a sudden, everyone sort of felt like people that even wrote a couple of days ago, like, I'm not ready to share my story. A couple of days later, boom, they share their story. And I guess that's also the really important thing here, that we're sort of giving strength in numbers, that people feel like, oh my God, I'm definitely not alone in this. There's so many other people, and if I have something to be ashamed about, then everyone else has something to be ashamed about. So, hey, let's just do it. And I think that is really important because the biggest part in sexual assault is usually the shame that comes with it. The fact that um, you feel like it's your fault. It's all your fault that this happened. But yeah. Um, but I also think
Yeah.
I've felt many times that it's very overwhelming to go on Twitter right now, to follow these stories, to keep reading them. But I think it's so important that we actually do it, because if we just turn a blind eye, we're not going to create change. And essentially, these things are going to keep happening if we don't actually do anything about it. So
Hmm.
I think it's really, really good that we are taking the time to listen and do something about this.
Yeah, and I feel
So I
like,
don't think that people should feel bad about it, but rather the other way around, feel empowered by the fact that we're making change and doing something good about this.
yeah, and it's good to see. I think it's good to see things getting sort of torn down a bit, like you said, with what's happening with Method, with, even with Twitch, to a point where, if things kind of need to get broken a bit, so that, you know you can have more diversity in these positions as well, because I think that's a kind of a big issue, right? Is that it's not just that you have, let's say, like, almost all men in those positions. It's that these men, like, kind of came up in the industry together, and, like you said, have been covering for each other for a long time. And, getting more of a diverse workplace, not only just, with the demographic, but just with people that don't know each other and don't have a stake in, in the other person, and so that if they
Yeah.
see something wrong, they feel comfortable saying something, and they're not going to put their neck out, what I mean? They're not going to put their neck out to
Yeah.
save their buddy
I
or
had this
whatever. And
discussion actually about this, like why it's like this. I mean, essentially, I think it's probably somewhat like this in all the industries, especially like the higher up you get. And but I wonder if it's worse in the gaming industry because I mean, think about it. Essentially, this all evolved from okay, if we put it from the fact that it was a very male dominated industry before, at least it's less so now, but that's where it came from, and it was about guys just chilling around in in their rooms, goofing around, usually late hours. You say a bit exaggerated things. You're not very politically correct in how you say things, and joking gets a bit worse. You might not even call someone out if they make a racist joke, even if everyone in the party might not feel comfortable with it. That this kind of atmosphere, and essentially, I think that is where the entire gaming community came from,
Hmm.
and that's also where it's evolved from. So I think this transition is yeah, exactly, the famous locker room talk, what you do behind closed doors when it's a bit more, chill with the buddies sort of. And now we're moving into a more mainstream, actually accepted industry, and I think that transition needs to happen where people need to start respecting that this is not just an unserious um small industry anymore. This is actually a really, really big and important one. So I think it's good that this transition is happening, because a lot of other industries, they have a lot of corruption as well, but I don't think it's to this extent because they've sort of been around for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But I don't really know.
this whole industry, the streaming industry, is not that old, really. I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I was having a conversation with someone just yesterday about this. Like, I don't know even when I was in college if it was really a thing. I mean, people were posting videos on YouTube, but like, this is only like 10 years ago. And it's like it's not much older than that. And then competitive gaming and online gaming is maybe a little older
Yeah.
than that, but it's a very new industry. So you have a lot of the same, like you said, a lot of the same people, that kind of
Yeah.
started everything, and they're really, I think, yeah. And now that there's so much money sort of kind of tied to it, and all of these opportunities and all of these, careers tied to it,
Yep.
it's
That's the
really,
big thing as
yeah.
well. I think that, I mean, this industry has grown so fast in such a short amount of time that a lot of people have just been jumping on board and grab whatever opportunity they have been able to get their hands on.
Hmm.
And I think that is now what we're seeing, that some of these companies are going to be in it for the long run. They're going to be here a long time, and they're going to do this sustainably, and others are going to be filtered out. And I think that essentially happens with everything. But at the same time, I know there's a lot of like scandals, and I don't know, banking industries and all these top percent of people in the world, wherever. So it's at the same time, I guess you will never get away from it, because this is what the world looks like.
Hmm.
But it's super nice to see that the gaming community won't take it. If
Yeah.
we know about it, we won't take it. And
Yeah.
that's really, really impressive, actually.
Well, I think that's the thing too. Is it's like across Twitch and streaming, it's such a diverse place with people with all kinds of different backgrounds from all different places in the world. And I think that's sometimes why that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I feel like as an outsider, and as like this person that has sort of more like a broad view of what streaming is, like you just sort of see like the end. You're seeing all the endpoints. You're seeing all of the
Yeah.
individuals, but you're not really seeing like what makes the machine go and like what's
Yeah. Yeah,
happening kind of
absolutely.
behind the scenes a little bit. And
Yeah.
because that's where
And I
I
would
think,
say a
yeah.
lot, like when it comes to networking, and okay, so essentially, like the reason why you need all of these people and all these, why you end up in these situations is because a lot of the networking, when it comes to growing your stream and also gaining sponsors and all these things, essentially, you can. I mean, once you become a big streamer, um, people are gonna reach out to you. But if you're not there and you're not being reached out to, then you have to do the reaching out yourself. And how do you do that? Well, you basically go to events. And that's usually where these things happen. It's at TwitchCon, Insomnia, DreamHack, all these events that are going on around the world. And all of these companies, they bring their top people in, fly them into the same area as streamers. And, you basically, the atmosphere is very much like free alcohol, mingle with everyone. You know, a lot of people get very drunk, and then it's a lot of after parties and the after party after the after party, and this whole story. So I think that as a girl, and you're fairly new coming into the scene, it's very easy to get taken advantage of. And I also think it's hard because, I mean, personally, I've often, like, I tend to always say no. I'm not really the person that will go along with anything. If I feel uncomfortable, I will say no. I will, leave and stuff like that. But not everyone will. And especially a lot of people are afraid to say no, especially if it's a person in power.
Hmm.
And essentially that's what happens. They start to manipulate them. They might not realize it at first. They don't feel like they can say no, and if they do, it might cause a lot of a lot of you know issues with their career going forward. And one thing leads to another, and essentially just escalates and becomes worse. Sometimes they don't even have that much time to make a decision, and all of a sudden they're finding themselves in a situation they don't really want to be in, and they don't know how to get out of it. And sometimes, like Chai is saying as well, there's streamers getting drugged as well at events like Roofied and stuff. And it's also been situations where at like Twitch partner parties where there are hundreds of partners, maybe even thousands of partners attending the events with free alcohol and everything. The drinks are just lined up on tables. There's no way that you can know that all of these partners are, nice, honest, and legit. And these drinks are just standing there open. You can grab them as you please, but hey, it's like a roulette, Do you want the potentially roofie drink or do you want the other potentially roofie drink? You go ahead and choose.
Yeah.
So I think that there's been a lot of, I don't know, there hasn't been enough responsibility in the industry. For instance, my sponsor Elgato, they had this party as well where they were also offering free alcohol. And there was this instance where the guy, I don't know what actually happened, but essentially there was something that happened at the party, and after that they realized that this is not working. We can't do it like this. We need to keep track of people. They need to be able to keep track of their own drinks,
Mm.
and have a system for it. So what they did is that they started with bracelets. You can order your drink at the bar. You can get bottles where you can put your thumb on it if you want to, stuff like this,
Hmm.
and actually like do something towards it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because that's not really what I've seen with Twitch.
Hmm.
um Especially not in the US parties. I mean, this thing with the open glasses, that was like last year.
Yeah, that
So
seems crazy. That seems crazy to me. Like, because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't have any experience with like Twitch events and things like that. But like with my personal life, my personal job, like I guess yeah, they're both jobs, but whatever. But like going to events where we have a vendor like hosting us, which would be similar to like Elgato or like one of your sponsors. It is like that where it's everything is very controlled, right? You're going like you have some sort of bracelet or identification that says that you're supposed to be in this in this building in this party. You're getting your drinks from a bartender or from someone. It's very controlled. You're watching it being poured. Like it, I just couldn't
Yeah,
imagine, especially with the I think the I don't know. It's like you've got people that are coming from all different places. Like you said, you don't know who these people really are. I mean, at the end of
yeah,
the day, I mean, you know them from their streams, but you don't really know them as
yeah,
individuals or personally. And you're also dealing with a lot of like younger people as well that I don't know. It's like you have to be a little bit more cautious and like more,
yeah,
I think more protective of people that maybe I don't know. I don't want to say like they're naive or whatever, but it's like they're just young and they haven't they don't have, and not everyone has a lot
yeah,
of life experience at that point. And it's like
exactly.
it's super
And that's
irresponsible to
probably
sort of
the
put
issue
people in that
that
situation.
yeah, these guys like in powerful positions taking advantage of these girls because they realize that these girls are new. They're probably easily manipulated, and they probably have a huge like desire to succeed, and so they're going to go through a lot more effort to get there, and so they're like perfect targets. um but I think it's important to never glorify the streaming industry in that sense, but actually, you know to, I don't know how to phrase it, but essentially give yourself the respect that you deserve, I would say. And don't, don't sell your soul because it's not worth it, I would
Yeah, I
say.
think treating it like, any other profession or any other professional career, and yeah, holding yourself to certain standards, sort of looking at, yeah, I think that's the important thing. I think that I think too many of it like just want to chase it a bit, right? And like, it's
Yep.
everyone's putting in time, everyone's grinding, everyone's trying to make it, right? And if you see an opportunity to sort of maybe take a big leap forward, or you see this, sort of like, hey, this is going to, get me where I want to be, or at least it sounds like it's going to get me where I want to be. Maybe
Yep.
maybe you are more willing to take that leap and not, yeah. I don't know. I think
Yep.
that's tricky. I think on all ends. I think like we were talking about earlier, like, outside of this, I think it's just, like, from me, someone that's been doing this for a while, it like just sort of part time. It's like any opportunity you see that could maybe give you a leg up or could get, kind of pull you forward a bit. It's very
Yeah.
tempting, right? It's very like, God, I
Exactly.
feel like I've been doing this for a long time and sort of like stuck in neutral, and all of a sudden I see this opportunity where I can, make this connection with this person or whatever it is, and it's gonna, be this, this huge thing for me, whatever.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
that it gets easier as you sort of strive towards that success. It's easy to like once you've actually done something that you maybe felt a little bit uncomfortable doing, but you essentially felt like, you got the attention of a big streamer that you really wanted or something like that. You got something in return for it. Next time you might actually be willing to go for something a little bit more uncomfortable, and it gradually becomes worse and worse until you realize that you're so far gone that you don't know like how did I end up here, what's happening, I'm not even myself anymore, stuff like that.
yeah, it's
So
like, yeah, it's everything is like, it's all like fame driven, and you're really trying to like to
yeah.
constantly build up your own personal brand, right? And it's like,
Yep.
it's so difficult. And I think that, some, because like my day job, like so much of what I do is reading people's, body language, reading, trying to get reads on people like all day long, where I am very aware of how difficult it is to tell when someone is being disingenuine, when someone's being, someone is being manipulative. It's very difficult, and if you're not someone that does that all the time, it's even more difficult, especially when they have some sort of influence over you, or have something to maybe, that you feel like they're offering you, or to kind of raise you up. And it's like, I think that's
Yep.
what's so important about this conversation, and why the culture is so toxic the way that it was currently structured. And yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think I still don't know exactly what, all of the fixes are, but I think it's important to just kind of keep the dialogue going, and keep things, I think, more transparency, letting people know what's happening. And I think just being more aware of the situation as well. It's just, I
Yeah.
don't know, it's,
And
yeah.
I also think like John just said, it's good to remember as well that a lot of people on Twitch are usually like I would say a lot of us, not everyone, are introverts and tend to be slightly awkward in social situations, which also means that there's going to be more alcohol in the entire like required to loosen up a bit and feel like you're fitting in, which is also going to make things worse because you're more susceptible to everything. And I think there's a lot of people that feel this way. um I've even had that issue personally because I mean people don't think so, but I'm very introvert. I do work in extrovert situations, but it's not very like it's not easy for me. I actually have to try hard, and it definitely makes it easier if I have some alcohol in me.
Hmm.
And there's people that are even, struggling even more with this. So
No,
I think it's good to
yeah,
keep that in the equation.
I think so too. And I think, yeah, I'm just, yeah. Well, like, I can just keep drawing on personal experience. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very similar to you guys. I mean, it's sort of funny. Like, I'm a salesperson by trade, but I'm very, like, I don't know how to describe this. I'm very like kind of shy, like in those social situations, like to a point, right? Like, I'm not comfortable in those social situations. So it is one of those things when you're trying to network, you're trying to, get to know people in a large group or in an uncomfortable setting. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you are going to lean a little bit on, maybe having a drink or two or something like that to kind
Yeah.
of, loosen yourself up, and kind of feel more comfortable in that situation, especially if it's you feel like it's a necessity to do so, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Everyone
it's
else is
going to,
drinking, it's free drinks, so yeah,
yeah, and it also helps you
definitely.
just feel a little, I don't know. Yeah, I get it. I don't I don't want to talk about that too much, but it's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, because sometimes I feel like
I
it's
think a
like,
lot of
yeah,
people can relate to it.
yeah.
And I think it's easier to like when you combine it all, it's not really strange that these girls ended up where they ended up. Um, they've just, met the wrong people at the wrong time. And
Hmm.
when you add everything up, they might be shy, they might be introvert. There's free alcohol. They have a desire to be successful and famous or whatever it is. And there's people around them that can give them these things, or at least that they think so.
Hmm.
When you combine all these things, and it ends up being someone who doesn't have good intentions,
Yeah.
it's bound to end up
Yeah,
that
well,
way.
and it's the like the predatory behavior with no checks, right? Because it's like there's a very like it from the accounts that I've read, it seems like they're very private situations, right? Where it's like
Yeah,
it literally is like this girl and one other person, and they're
yeah.
in some sort of private setting, and
Yeah,
it
usually like this
yeah.
this situation where they might even be at like a party or something, and then one of the two people, like usually the guy, says like, "Oh crap, I spilled something on my shirt. I gotta go change the shirt. Would you mind keeping me company? My hotel's just across the street or something, you know." And the girl's like, okay, fine. Like we've hung out a bit, so it's all right, sure. I'll do it. And they go there with the intention to just change shirt and then leave, and then it turns into something that they didn't at all expect. Like they end up in a private situation that they didn't actually want to put themselves in. Instead, what you could have done is be like, no, sorry, you can just go change the shirt and I'll, grab myself another drink. We'll meet down here. You could have just stood your ground. But since people are very, trying to get somewhere, trying to be liked by this person, to get influence, to get them to help them out, etc., they're gonna be, more willing to do things and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's very difficult to predict that it's gonna happen. It's just all of a sudden you find yourself in the situation like, what the heck just happened? Um,
Exactly. So okay, so I kind of held you a bit. Do you
and
want
no
to?
worries.
Okay, so do you want to open it up and see if people have a couple questions, maybe just to
Yeah,
see?
sure.
Yeah, why don't we do a little bit of that, and then just because we've
Yeah.
gone, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so if anybody has anything that they want to ask, have us talk about, yeah, a little bit of Q&A time. So just open it up.
Q&A.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. What is happening on July 2nd?
Announcement.
Yeah,
I'm
just an
sorry for my
announcement.
dogs, by the way.
Oh my god. Guess we just have fun.
Skin in Fortnite doesn't count. Not
Yeah.
on the topic.
Yeah. Does anyone have any comments or questions or anything they want us to elaborate on from the topic? Be the thing to ask.
Now it's the time. Also, if you have anything related to like working and streaming or whatnot, I don't know. What
Yeah.
would you recommend if a sponsor came up to you? What do you mean? How
Yeah. Do
to
you want to
behave? Or
maybe elaborate? Yeah.
yeah, feel free to elaborate on it. But essentially, like, so if you meet a sponsor, say that you're at a party or something, and you are a streamer, and um, you meet someone. I think it's important for me personally. How I would handle it is to become friends with them first, because if you can become friends and they feel like they can have a good time with you, just chatting and all that, it's going to be a much more relaxed situation, and they're going to be more likely to, be on your side. You should not go up to them and be like, "Oh, hi, you work at Elgato? Oh, sure, I would love to be sponsored by you." Do not do that.
Yeah.
But rather like, "Oh, hi, who are you?" You might even know who. Okay, so here's the thing. I always know who. Like, if I go up to someone like that, I always know who they are from beforehand. But you act like you don't. So you're like, "Hi, my name is my Gabby." Usually ask for an introduction. You have like a friend who knows them, mutual friend or something. If you don't have one, try to find someone. It makes the entire world if you have a mutual friend. That mutual friend walks up to them and says hi. And, "Oh, this is my friend Gabby. She's also a streamer." And you're like, "Hi, how you doing? Oh, what do you do?" And you're just gonna be curious. It's good to ask about them,
Hmm.
so that they feel like they are important, and they tell you a bit about, "Okay, yeah, I work at Elgato." And I'm like, "Oh wow, that's so cool. You guys make amazing products. I love them. So what's your position?" Try to just become their
Yeah.
friend, and get yourself acquainted with them,
I
because essentially you want them as your friend, even if they are your sponsor. I mean, all
Yeah.
of my sponsors are my friends at this point.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to consider too is that if like let's say you're in Gabby's situation and you make friends with someone, let's say at Elgato, think about the fact that the people that work for that company, they run in a different circle than Gabby does. So Gabby's in like the streamer circle, they're in the vendor circle, right? And a lot of those
Yeah.
people jump from vendor position to vendor position in different companies, so they tend to know a
Yeah.
lot more people. And now they can kind of
Absolutely.
act as a connector for Gabby from, let's say, Elgato to some other brand, whatever it is, a motherboard company, whatever, some other accessory company, something else where she could make a second connection because she made
Yeah.
made a connection and made good friends with this one person. So I think, and then
Yeah.
also that person that she made friends with may not be at Elgato. We're just using Elgato as the
Yep.
example, but
Yep.
like they may not be there forever, but then they do move to another
That's why
company.
networking is
And
so important
yeah, so it's
in the
about,
industry.
it's
Yeah.
more about, I think creating that, like that network of, of people that within the industry, because it's going to help you get a better deal with them, but it's also may help you get other deals down the line as well.
Yeah.
I like Phil's question. So he said, what advice would you
Yeah.
give a new / younger streamer, so they could protect themselves from potentially being preyed upon?
I think it's important to be careful and keep your integrity. Be curious and be out there, but try to have a friend with you, someone that you really trust. And usually at these parties, there's always a plus one. So keep your friend with you that can help you out and everything. Maybe keep track of you. They don't necessarily have to be in the industry. Even better if they're not, honestly. Um, and also just be a bit cautious with everything that involves going one on one with someone, or stuff like that. Or if someone's going to order your drink, make sure that you're in the bar with them when they're ordering the drink so that you can take the drink for yourself. All these kind of things, be careful, do it the smart way. um I guess like those kind of street smart moves are the only things that I could give
Yeah,
in that
and I think
situation.
it depends on the scenario too. I think that you always want to consider, like, does this feel professional or does this feel like it's outside of like being a professional too? Like, just make sure that anytime someone's, you're getting that situation and someone's asking you to do something or asking you to, like, kind of Gabby was, drawing that picture of, I want to leave because of this or that, or if it sounds like they have some sort of ulterior motive, like just try to be as
Yeah.
aware of that as
You can always
possible.
give
And
an excuse or be
yes,
like, "Oh,
yeah,
sorry, I was just gonna meet my friend over here," or you can pull anything. It can be a lie. That's why it's good to have another friend with you at every party, because you can always pull your friend as an excuse. Oh, sure, but or like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I just promised my friend that I would come find her after spoken to you. Always have a backup, somewhere to go, somewhere to run to if you need to.
for sure.
Um, and that's also good if you're a girl, that if the other person, your friend, is a guy, because that makes it so much more, um, you know,
Hmm.
it plays it down a bit more.
Everyone wants us to
I don't,
address Dr. Disrespect.
yeah.
I keep seeing that.
But
Uh,
we don't know anything about Doc, and there's no
yeah,
one that actually knows what's going on.
yeah,
I guess we'll have to wait and see until like Monday or
yeah.
so. What it is.
I think the only thing I would want to say is that I just, dude, this is speculating, is the only thing that I'm wondering is if, because of some of the things we had talked about, if it is something that they're trying to, I guess, look into and investigate, and because it's such a big, high profile thing, that's
Yeah.
possible, right? Is that's
Yeah.
why it's so private and why we haven't heard anything more, because there's so much
Yeah.
at stake with, how this is presented and how this comes out. And they also could be protecting people on both sides.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to kind of think about that. So I think that's, yeah, without speculating on it, but it seems like that's kind of what's happening, is that people are being
Yeah.
protected, whether it's, on one end or
Yeah.
the other. So yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, it doesn't make
I
sense.
see the question: will it hurt you not to attend those parties? Will it hurt you? No, it won't hurt you, but you won't be able to benefit from it. And it can definitely be a huge beneficial part of it. That's what I would say, because that is where you make friends. That is where you find your potential manager. That is where you find your potential sponsors, or other big streamers that might host you in the future, and they might be your break. All those kind of things. If you don't go to the parties, you're also going to miss out on the networking, and it's a really, really big part of the streaming industry.
Hmm.
I do, however, I want to point out there are successful streamers that do not do these things. Look at Loya, for instance.
Yes.
She
Yeah.
does not go to events. She does not do these things.
Mhm.
She's very successful on her own. So it's not necessary,
Yeah.
but
But
it will
it's
definitely
yeah,
be.
it's very difficult. I would say I
Yeah.
would say that it's
Yeah.
like, there's very few that have got to that point. And I also think if you look at some, like Loya is a great example of someone that if she were to have joined, let's say she was a little different personally and she had joined 100 Thieves, she'd joined
Yeah.
FaZe, she joined one of these big orgs when she really first hit it, would she
She'd be
have,
forced to these
yeah, she would be forced to go, right? But then also,
yeah,
would she
yeah,
be, would she have, 10 million YouTube subscribers, and would she have, 10,000 viewers or 15,000 viewers right now, instead of 3,000 or 4,000? Like,
yeah,
so there, and it's, I think that's what's tricky with it. Like, I kind of been studying a little bit of the industry, and it's like, you look at how, how different people sort of approach when they get to that point, right? Because you kind of have this, like, okay, I blew up on my own, but to
yeah.
continue the success or to get to that next
You gotta
level,
leverage on it, and I think that's the
yeah,
most important
yeah,
thing.
how do I do it?
Also,
Yeah.
one thing that I did not manage to leverage on, I grew a lot with Fortnite. I did not leverage on it, sadly, because I think Fortnite wasn't really the right way for me. Um, I continued with Fortnite for longer than I actually wanted to because I was more scared of losing what I had
Hmm.
than just moving on. And I think that's probably the bad part. I should have just moved on way earlier, and um, instead of ending up in a situation where I felt like, okay, there's no point in being stuck in Fortnite anymore.
Yeah. Well, and yeah,
So leveraging.
it's tough, right? Because you have this like kind of thing happen to you, and it's like you feel, it's like, how long is the wave going to end? Like, what's the peak of the
Yeah,
wave? And like, yeah, trying to leverage at the right moment, right? It's like it's so difficult. I think like with any, no matter what you're doing, it's like, how do you know what your moment is?
yeah.
Run out of a name. If someone wants to sponsor you, what are the red flags to look out for? Um,
Ooh, I think the most important thing is to make sure that you're being like, what are the deliverables, and what are they actually giving you in return? In my instance, like what are they paying, for instance? Because a lot of the big red flags, if they are an unserious sponsor, they're not going to pay your actual worth.
mhm.
And yeah, first of all, do not ever take a deal if it's unpaid and they expect you to do things.
Yeah.
If it's unpaid, it should be completely voluntary. For instance, charity streams, or I don't know, these kind of things where essentially you could just, end up not doing it because you don't want to. There's no requirement of you. But if there is a requirement of you to do something, you need to make sure that you're getting your worth.
Yeah.
And
And
also that you're not giving too many deliverables in terms of what they're actually paying.
yeah, and I
But
would
yeah,
also consider like what your current reach is, right? Like,
yeah,
so you kind of like have to look at like what's your current value, what's your current reach, and is this a deal that's specific for me, and does it fit with my personality? Does it fit with the brand that I'm trying to present? And does it
yeah,
do anything for me? Because if it doesn't do anything for you, at the end of the day, it doesn't really make sense to, give this company exposure as you grow,
exactly.
it's because it's not really going to move the needle in terms of any sort of, income for
Yeah,
you, and all you're doing is just advertising for them like for free, and
yeah,
also like attaching yourself to a brand that you may or may not want to attach yourself to. So
yeah.
that's, I don't know, I
And I
think
also
that's
think,
important.
like Chat said, that be aware of the affiliate sponsorships. Those are not good, in my opinion. I would never take an affiliate deal. Affiliate deals are when you get paid percentage of how many, I don't know, sales you get on a link or whatnot. Never take those because they're literally just taking advantage of you. Your work is still your work, and if if the deal is not giving them sales, that they are probably the ones doing the wrong marketing. It's not on you to make sure that their deal goes well, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, for sure. And you're also telling your community to buy a product that you're not really getting compensated for. I mean, you may be
Yeah,
to a very small extent, but if the product's not good, that's going to reflect more on you than it is on the company. So
yeah,
that's the other thing I think I would kind of consider. Any advice for
definitely.
speaking out about predatory behavior you have experienced or been witness to?
Ooh, I think it's important to write your story down and go out with it in public. If you feel like you need, and I would say Twitter is the best place to do it. I would also say it's very good if you have the support. Like, you can talk in DMs to a streamer or someone, like regardless of whatever scene it is. If it's the streaming scene or if it's some other industry or whatnot, you can take advantage of it and talk to them beforehand. Maybe they can help you get the message out there, retweet. Maybe they can encourage you on where to best share it, or things like these. So I would definitely say, like, reach out to someone that you feel is in the same area at least, and then um put it out there. Even if someone being witness it, like, if you're witness to a situation, it's equally important that you go out with it. You might want to check with the actual victim first, to see if they're okay with you mentioning their name. um if not, then maybe they want to share their story, and when they do, you might want to share your story of witnessing. There's a lot of people that actually have been doing that, but it's important to just think of the integrity of the victim. But other than that, I feel like you should definitely just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on that one.
Yeah.
That was good. Let's see here. Writing. Do you think this situation could make streaming look bad to potential sponsors for? Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me read. I'll read the question out loud. Do you think
Yep.
this situation could make streaming look bad to potential sponsors for the foreseeable future? Absolutely. I mean, if you think about the kind of the black eye that this has put on streaming, in terms of what Twitch looks like, what organizations look like, and what I think Twitch has been trying to go for in terms of its like inclusiveness and its
Yep.
the culture that it's trying to project. And then when these things come out and it's sort of the exact opposite, and it's like all the skeletons are out of the closet, and you're seeing all those things. Yeah, I mean, now that you've got these companies that are not going to want to associate themselves with with Twitch, with live streaming, with a lot of these and because especially over the last year or so, we've seen a big influx of non-gaming brands sponsoring live streamers. We've seen
Yep.
we've seen whatever. I mean, you've seen
Mainstream sponsors.
yeah, mainstream
companies,
sponsors. I've seen what, like men's razors and different candy bars and different soft drink brands and all kinds
like
of things.
foods and
Yeah, things that are very very mainstream. Restaurant chains in the United States. Like I've seen a lot of these things where those companies, like they look at it sort of in this broad view, and they're going to look at this, and maybe they're not going to want to associate themselves with with streamers, and that's such a
yeah.
it's such a big deal, I think, overall, to like. Oh. Alaska's like, I want to
Someone
be
saying
on. I
hi.
want to be on too. I want to be on too.
Hi,
Oh my
mom.
god.
I'm famous now. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think it can definitely hurt the industry. I hope it won't do it long term, but
Yeah.
it might affect it short term because there's currently a lot of risk in the industry.
Hmm.
So we might see some of the bigger companies being a bit, shy on sponsorships, and maybe like waiting out the storm, see what this turns into. But I hope it won't have a long term effect on the industry, because that would be sad.
Male stream. I'm just trying to like pull out some.
Yeah. I saw that too. That it might hurt male streamers more. I don't know, actually. Maybe.
Yeah, I would think it's more of a like, I don't know that it would be specific. I think it's more just general for the industry. It's like they're just not going to want to associate or put their money there I think would be the concern.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
I saw I want to stream because I think it would be cool to play games all day as your job. Do you think I will make it? I mean, here's the thing: you can try, but I don't think it's a good idea to have the intention of making it your job before you've actually done it. I think streaming is something that you grow into liking and becoming good at. It's a process, and for some people, it's just a fun hobby. For other people, it might turn into their job. But I don't think it's a good idea to um, have a goal as being like becoming your job, but rather, if you really enjoy it and you just love it so much that you wouldn't want to do anything else, then go ahead.
Yeah, but I think it's
I did
yeah.
not intend to have this as a job. I mean, I
Yeah.
was studying, and all of a sudden I graduated, and it was like, okay, so the stream is probably at a place where I can survive off of it, so
Mhm.
let's do it.
What I have a question for you then. So
Yeah.
what was your take when you got into it? Did you have a take of like, did you always kind of look at it as like a profession, or did you look at it like I'm playing games, and like how did you like kind of make the leap from I'm playing games a lot to I want people to watch me play games a lot. Like what was that like? Do you kind of remember like
Hmm.
what that looked
I
like
think
mentally? Like,
I've always seen it a bit more serious than just playing with my buddies, but I definitely did not see it as a job from the start.
hmm
I think I saw it more as putting on a show, sort of. Like now I start the stream and I play games and yeah, put on a show for a while, and then it was really fun and I kept doing it and it evolved. And essentially I realized that I can probably make a business out of this and I started doing that. So I think it gradually turned into something more serious. But I was always quite, I didn't look at it as something that was just, my hobby or something. I think I always saw it a bit more serious.
I think it's hard when you first when you first start to understand like exactly how nuanced it is, like just how much kind of like goes into it, and it's not just like you said, it's not just playing games. Like there's so much
Yeah.
more that's sort of happening, and if you're doing it at a high level, like what kind of entertainment are you bringing to people? You know, it's not just about like, hey, I get to
Yeah.
hang out in my pajamas and play video games for 8 hours a day, and
Yeah.
people are going to show up and going to watch and they're going to pay me to do it. It's like, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. What did I
Yeah.
missed something, and now I feel like I missed out. Um, start for the money. Yeah, I mean, you for sure. I mean, Ethan's comment. You for sure don't want to do it for the money. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, there's some people that actually do it for the money, and I
yeah.
think it's easy to like tell on a person what their motivation behind doing it is.
hmm
It usually comes across quite clearly.
Yeah, I think my motivations are very clear. That I spend way more money on streaming than I'll probably ever make.
But that's
Oh my
also a
god.
good thing because the most important thing with streaming is that it gives you joy.
hmm
That's not always going to be the case. I've gone through periods where I don't like streaming at all, but I know that I've had the joys of streaming, so I know it's also possible to get out of that mindset and everything. But it doesn't matter whatever you work with, you're always going to go through rough patches, and it's all about finding your way out of it, make some change so they actually start liking it again and stuff like that. And
What were you guys laughing
yeah,
about though? Just because I missed something. I feel very left out of the
yeah, I have no idea.
conversation. Oh
I
my
have no
god.
idea actually.
I know. Oh my god. Wait, I was gonna ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
Um, what was it? Oh, I guess just related to that, like how
Mm.
how it is. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to say this right because I mean, we've talked a lot, like off stream and just about how how big of a flux like things can go through at times, like where you're changing games, or you may be changing sponsors, or sort of it's sort of this like this big up and down, like how you sort of you held on to Fortnite for so long because it kind of gave you a little bit of stability and kind of maintained a certain level, your community sort of maintained a certain
Yep.
level, but at some point you knew personally it wasn't the right fit for you and where you wanted to be long term, and like I guess just kind of how what's your like advice, I guess. I know it's sort of like you're still kind of going through it a
Yeah.
bit, but like what's your advice for
Well,
people on on that, or kind of
I
you
mean,
know
looking back, I would say it depends on what it is you like. If I compare myself to like Loya, for instance, I think that she personally loves Fortnite with all of her heart. I think she really does, and I think she's always done that. I loved Fortnite, but once once I got to the curve where I felt like, yeah, okay, I've done this. I didn't really love it that much. I didn't genuinely love it. I had this it was super fun when it was new and exciting, but then eventually with time, I felt like it wasn't my long-term thing. It's like with a relationship. Once the first feelings go away, like you realize that this wasn't it. And at that point I realized afterwards that I had put all of my eggs in one basket. All of my eggs was in Fortnite.
hmm
And essentially, knowing myself now, I should definitely have kept variety as a part, even though I gained from Fortnite.
yeah
Because the problem is when I wanted, since I built on Fortnite for so long, it was really difficult to move away from it because the people didn't want to see it.
hmm
They didn't want to see anything else. And if I just had made people, if I had grown off of Fortnite hype, but also simultaneously maintaining some variety in other games, I could probably have leveraged it a bit more. I could have made it possible for me to maintain that growth even in other games, etc.
Hmm.
So I think that would have been way smarter, and always think about it long term and not just like, what do I love here and now, but think about it in the long run.
Yeah. So kind of like, I guess looking at, I'm gonna say here, looking at like what you see for yourself long term, and not, kind of, it's sort of, you kind of get stuck in that, or caught up in the moment of like, okay, my stream is doing great, I'm playing this game, this is fantastic, and then before you get to that point where it's not so great anymore and you sort of feel trapped, it's like, okay, well, what do I really,
Yeah.
kind of constantly having that, like, that vision of where do I want to see myself, be, and then kind of make
Yeah.
those adjustments while you're in the moment, rather than kind of getting to the end and then, kind of scrambling to figure it out, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And it's easy to say in hindsight, but it's like, I don't know. It's kind of,
Definitely, definitely.
yeah.
And I think it's, even though like it's hard to know that beforehand, because you think that you know so much about streaming, but it's so like the industry changes so much and so fast. There are so many new games, there are new people coming to the platform, and I mean, even looking back, when I started streaming, there were like a handful of games that you played. You played CS if you were like a shooter person. There were no BRs at that point. You played League of Legends or Dota, or you played like World of Warcraft,
Mm,
or it was like storyline variety, a bit of mix pretty much. But those were like the few things that you did. But then all of a sudden, everyone who enjoyed shooters could go into PUBG, um, Fortnite. I don't know, like Rainbow Six Siege. You
yeah.
could go into so many different games, and it became very diverse. And every single sub community was much more like niched, and they had their own patterns, their own um system of how they work and how you appeal to that community the best. And I think that I was very stuck in the mindset of how Twitch was back then, and I didn't really adapt my strategies to the fact that it all changed into a completely different platform.
Hmm.
And also, like Silva was saying, the biggest streamers used to be pro players. Now they're actually entertainers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's also a big change. So in other words, the type of content that has been greatly appreciated has changed throughout time. So I think it's important to never assume that you know everything, because will always be changes in the industry. And when you assume that you know it all, then it becomes dangerous because you also assume that you can, stop reevaluating and stop trying to foresee the next big thing, etc.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to like always stay humble on that sense.
Yeah, but then also have,
Um,
yeah, I think constantly be open to, like, adjusting or changing, or, finding a new direction, I think, instead of,
yeah,
kind of getting locked into this is how I'm going to do it. But yeah, what you were saying about the most of the top people being entertainers, it is kind of funny how, most of the people that are at the top, they sound like radio shows. You listen to their
yeah,
streams, and like you could almost listen to a lot of their streams and not even see what's happening,
yeah,
and what's
and it's
happening
still
as it.
entertaining.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's sort of the, like, the people that have found like that mass appeal. It's kind of cool. Like,
yeah.
you need the voice too. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. That's one
yeah.
thing. Like, it's important to actually listen to your streams. I had the other day, I was listening to my VOD. I just changed my microphone, and I've been experimenting with the location of the mic and settings and everything. And I listened to one of my VODs, and I realized, oh my god, the microphone sounds horrible. I would not want to watch this. Like, I would totally leave for the microphone.
Hmm.
And it's really, really important to continuously evaluate yourself, because um essentially, if you want people to continuously watch your stream and come back, I would rather say that it's not the microphone and these things that do make you successful, but it's the things that make people not leave.
For sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say having these good features around, making it a quality production, that's gonna make people feel like it will be a smooth ride, so to say. But then you also have to have the content and everything that make people, interested in sticking around and all that.
Well, Gabby's, I think a lot of people, if you've ever been in Gabby's chat and someone's come in and asked, um, what would you recommend for a new streamer or for someone that's trying to make it in streaming? Her favorite answer is to tell people to watch their VODs.
Yeah,
So, of course, me being a Gabby viewer, that's what I've sort of built my
yeah,
stream around, is that like that kind of piece of advice. And maybe I
yeah.
took it to heart a little bit, maybe too much, because I am someone that I watch my stream. I don't watch the entire stream, but I watch my stream back almost every
Yeah,
day. And
yeah,
I'm constantly looking at it to see what am I entertaining myself? Am I enjoying watching myself? And then two, you
exactly.
start to pick apart, like you said, some of the technical things. Like, does it sound good? Is it visually
Yeah,
appealing? Like, what are the things that I could improve on? Like, the one thing that sticks in my mind is my microphone. Like, I haven't changed my microphone, but at one point I realized that I get really, really excited when I make a play in a game. If I make a big shot, or something like that. I'm very reactive to my gameplay,
yeah,
and I noticed that I didn't had no filters on the microphone, and it was peaking out like terribly.
yeah.
So how
Like
often?
cracks people's ears.
Yes,
That will definitely
how?
make people leave.
Yeah, how often was I doing that I
Yeah.
didn't realize, and I never even
Also
knew
good to
that. Yeah,
know that you might appeal to different like groups in that sense because some people might enjoy having people that are really like loud, obnoxious, screams a lot, definitely destroys your headset and everything. But someone who's lurking and wants a chill environment is not going to want that. So, what are you appealing to and try to adapt towards that.
for sure. Sure.
Definitely. What's
Um,
more important, a good cam or a good mic? I would say a good mic because
yeah,
a good
absolutely.
cam is never going to be disturbing or like it's not going to disturb the stream. Whereas a bad microphone can definitely ruin the entire um, stream.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think too that if you're just getting into it, like, I think that focusing on your content and focusing on like being a better broadcaster is really the right way to approach it. Because I think like what
Yeah,
I've said this before, but like what I got caught up in when I first started was all the technology. Like, you see all of the things that kind of can make a stream, look better, sound better, whatever, and you kind of forget about just being a really good broadcaster and entertaining people, and
yeah,
kind of finding your voice, and like finding like what is it that I do that is going to be, is going to entertain people, and then let your stream get better over time as you make changes. I mean,
yeah,
if you've been watching Gabby for a long time, I mean, her streams changed. It doesn't like
a
it's not.
lot.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, the
Yeah,
production. I mean, if you look at old VODs versus now, I mean, obviously at some point you upgraded your camera, at some point you upgraded your
yeah,
lighting. You've made microphone changes, like, you've had hardware. Hardware's change, like that stuff changes. Or
yeah,
the layouts change and things like that, or the
mm,
emotes change, and it's like those things are important, but they're not like that's not what makes it anyone want to see a VOD from 2016. But yeah, that's
yeah,
probably,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I think that's stuff that's important to keep in mind if you're
Yeah,
looking
definitely.
at it. Don't try to make all the changes at once. Don't look at,
Do it gradually. It's
yeah,
a
do it.
process.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's the right way to kind of approach it, because otherwise it's just stressful,
Yeah,
and it's like nobody wants that. Um,
yeah.
God.
On
Uh,
Johnny's question, what factors would have to come into play for you to retire from full-time streaming or streaming entirely? Um, Personally, it would probably be if I, during a long period of time, don't enjoy it and I can't seem to like find any like even after trying for a really long time, still not enjoying it. Then I mean, at that point, I'd probably give up that or like financially. If I won't be able to support myself financially, then of course I would have to move on. Maybe not move on entirely. Maybe I would get a side job, and see what I could do to, get back on track. But I guess those are the things I'd say.
how do you? I have a question for you, because like
Mhm.
I look at streaming a lot like sales, in terms of there's a lot of up and down, right? There's some months
Yeah.
where you feel like you're doing great, making a lot of money, what I mean, like you feel very comfortable, right? And then other months, for whatever reason, things are down a bit, viewership's dropped, the sub counts dropped, things that you
Yeah.
you can't necessarily control. It's the same with sales, where like I can't always control when I'm going to have a hot month, and
Yeah.
money's coming in and I feel great, but then you get into you can get into a cold stretch. Like, how do you kind of manage that, on like more of a personal level? Like, how do you manage like just
Ooh.
keeping more level, and not letting that
Yeah.
get to you too much? Like, what's your?
I think it's difficult, especially when you've had like, for instance, with the Fortnite hype, that was a huge boost in income for me. And I think that um, I don't know. After that dropped, it made a huge difference because I went from being like, okay, not worried about my income to actually, needing to like double check regularly and make sure that I have enough to survive and stuff. And that was a like mentally really, really rough transition to do.
Hmm.
It's easier to go the other way, but I think it also was very important for me to, I don't know, get a different perspective of everything and definitely get a different respect for the income that you have. I think a lot of people that blow up and start earning a lot of money, they might feel like it was easy money, and all of a sudden, they just, completely lose themselves and lose their personality. They might, spend it left and right, and they might, their personality could change completely. And I think I mean, I would never want to end up in that situation. And I think it's important to just learn from each situation and, just grow from it, I guess. But it was really, really hard and straining at times, especially with corona and everything, worrying about like, oh my god, are we going to be able to do this? Like, if there's a huge drop in subs, a huge drop in income, okay, like, can we still live here, all of
Hmm.
that? But yeah.
Are you someone that, so like when you do have a really like a really good month, like how do you kind of balance like enjoying it a little and then also like being a little bit more like, a little more conservative with it, and trying to, hang on to a little bit, like how do you kind of
Yeah.
like I don't just like, how are you personally with it? Like, do you, yeah, like sort of said, do you spend it all? Do you you know what I mean?
I
Like
mean,
I
I would say I increase my spending absolutely. Like, for instance, I might go grab a nice shrimp sandwich or something that I otherwise would not have,
yeah.
um, and stuff like that. And I might, like, go buy a new sofa where I otherwise just would have accepted whatever situation I'm in right now. But I wouldn't like just waste it on worthless things, I'd say. I also make sure to save a lot because essentially one day I want to be able to, like, buy a house and potentially even get a cheaper living cost so that I
Hmm.
don't have to worry about the financial part of it. Um but yeah, I do increase my spending, but not like insanely much so it's irresponsible and
Yeah.
it gets to a point where you're indebted and stuff like that. No.
Yeah, for sure. I
And
think,
as
yeah.
my income decreased, I adjusted that, of course. I had to
Yeah.
stop spending
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah, I'm kind of similar because like with sales, it's like you want to enjoy the, enjoy the highs, but you don't want the lows to feel like too low, right? So you try to stay somewhere in the
I think it's
middle.
weird as well with streaming. What happens is when you're successful, you sort of, at least for me, I was living in a bubble. I couldn't really grasp what was happening. And I didn't really start living until I got out of it because I sort of went into this trance, I guess, where I stopped having days off. I declined family dinners, family parties. I
Hmm.
just told them no, I can't. I'm streaming. I'm working. I became this huge addict to streaming, and instead of actually being able to enjoy what was happening, I, ended up destroying everything for myself because I think that was a part of why I sort of got like burnt out. I mean, I didn't do anything other than stream for like 2, 3 months. I
Yeah.
woke up, walked my dog, streamed, went to bed. That was all I did.
Hmm.
So I don't think that's healthy. Even if you have success, like this time, if I ever get that sort of success again, I want it to be long term. I want it to be sustainable, and I want to still be able to live my life and be able to maintain that for a long period of time, not just like a short, peak and then it's over. I don't want to do that again. So,
Yeah, well, I think it's hard. It's, you get caught up in it, right? It's like I've had it kind of on both ends because I'm doing a full-time job and I'm streaming essentially full time. Like I'm not putting in, I might be streaming, 80 hours a month or something like that, but doing that along with, with doing a full-time job, you kind of have to look at, that balance between like, your work life, stream, and then like you said, also your family and like your personal,
yeah,
your personal commitments, and like feeling like you have a good balance, and that you're not, that like you're not doing any of it at like the expense of any of it, right? It's like you
yeah,
still
yeah,
are
yeah.
getting the enjoyment out of it, and You know, yeah, I agree. I think that you see that with streaming a lot. You see where a lot of the successful streamers seem like all they do is work all the
Yeah.
time and they never take any days off, and it sort of like rewards them, you know, that like that
And I
lifestyle
think it might
rewards them.
work.
And yeah.
It might work if you don't have a family. Like if you don't maybe have a partner, if you don't, you know, you moved away from home, you live on your own, you usually don't hang out with people outside of gaming anyway. So, you know, they might have that time, but I think that everyone probably gets to a point in their life where they have other priorities as well, and you need to be able to like balance all of those things and need to
Hmm.
find a way to actually keep working with streaming and maintain your life as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing it on the high, like on the high end too, because like we were talking about, a lot of these streamers are getting older, having
Yeah.
families, having children, and now they don't have that same availability that they did in their mid
Yeah.
20s. That now they're getting in their upper 20s or 30s, like their life's changing and the commitments are changing. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see how, especially at the very top of the industry, like how those, you know, how those people sort of handle that balance. You know, as you see
Yeah.
more and more big examples of it, but. Oh, it's
Yeah.
interesting. So, all right, I'm gonna just wrap it there because I feel like
Yeah.
you know, it was a really really good
Absolutely.
conversation. And
Yeah. I'm
um
down for it again, everyone.
yeah, I think it was awesome. No, I think everybody was awesome. Like
Yeah.
we had a lot of good input. I think it was a good conversation. Yeah, so thank you so much, Gabby. Thanks for doing that with me. I
No
appreciate it. It
problem.
was super fun.
Yeah, it was
So
really fun.
yeah, all right, bye guys. I'm gonna sign off real quick, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'll let Gabby go.
Bye.
All right, guys. I'm just gonna end it right there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll have the whole thing up on YouTube if you guys got in late. And then I'll be on tomorrow. So yeah, say thanks to Gabby if you see her, and I'll see you guys soon. Later, guys. Bye. What's up? Nice, dude. Nice, dude.